Welcome to Hot Drama TV.
When two cities sang as one, the accidental, abstract and rash duet that set China's night on fire. On an ordinary weeknight that refused to behave, two stages lit up two different coastlines of Chinese pop. In Ningbo, Zhang Yixing's Naotiangong tour detonated with choreography sharp enough to slice light. In Shanghai, the Mercedes-Benz Arena glowed as Liu Yuning's baritone warmed a sold-out hall. At first glance, the two shows were parallel lines, close enough to feel the other's heat, destined never to meet. Then a progress bar appeared on the big screens, the band tucked behind a measured hush, and the impossible happened. The voices crossed 100-odd miles of sky and landed in the same song. 提到了你 mentioned you, announced Zhang on one stage, just as Liu lifted a hand to his earpiece on another. It wasn't merely a call and response, it was a call and convergence. The duet arrived like a meteor, announced seconds before impact, beautiful in its fall, and impossible to look away from. By midnight, #constellations, 井号张艺兴刘与您官宣, 井号刘与您张艺兴隔空对唱, blazed across the hot search sky. By morning, the collaboration version had landed on streaming platforms, and the comments pulsed with the same 5 words. On loop, 800 times. Turning a coincidence into an engineering problem. A spontaneous creative idea is the easy part. Turning it into a live cross-city performance is where romance meets math. What fans saw on stage, a frictionless duet gliding across 2 arenas, was the tip of a very anxious iceberg. Sound engineers whispered in terms the average listener never needs to learn. Latency budgets, round-trip time, jitter buffers, codec trade-offs. 2 truths governed the plan. The human ear notices delay before the human brain forgives it. Even tens of milliseconds can make 2 singers sound like they're arguing with their echoes. The camera punishes desynchrony. If mouths and music separate, immersion shatters. The solution was a threading of needles. 48 hours before showtime, the teams moved into both venues as if they were setting up a second stage within the first. Redundant fiber lines were provisioned. In-ear monitor mixes were rebuilt from scratch to anticipate delay instead of react to it. Engineers pre-calculated compensating delays, feeding each arena a future of the other by mere milliseconds, so that Zhang's snap and Liu's vowel would arrive in sync to the audience's brain. A specialized clock, think GPS-grade timekeeping for art, kept both shows marching to the same invisible second. Could they achieve zero latency? Physics laughed. But they hid the delay so well that the body forgot to notice. Live video producers rehearsed camera cuts to favor lingering reaction shots over tight lip-sync moments. Lighting directors wrote cues to speak across distance. Blue in Ningbo echoing blue in Shanghai. A flash here finishing as a sweep there. By the first chorus, the system felt less like technology and more like choreography. 2 brands, 1 moment. If you drew a Venn diagram of their public images, Zhang and Liu would overlap on work ethic and audience magnetism, while standing apart in iconography. Zhang is the architect, producer, choreographer, a perfectionist with a suitcase of world stages stamped on every flight tag. Liu is the narrator, actor-singer, street-honed and screen-loved, with a voice built for confession and crescendo. The duet gave fans a chance to watch architecture meet narrative within the same hook. It also challenged one of Mandopop's lingering habits, the resource exchange collaboration, where 2 names on a track read more like a ledger than a lyric. This one felt like the opposite. The origin was too clumsy to be strategic, the timeline too breathless to be bureaucratic. The risk, if it flopped it would flop in 2 arenas at once, was almost endearing. That risk paid back in attention, the gold coin of the attention economy, but more importantly in goodwill, the rarer metal. Anatomy of a song that travels well. 提到了你 works because it is humble about a complicated feeling. It doesn't lecture heartbreak. It observes it. The lyric leans into the everyday moment when a name slips out in conversation and suddenly the room feels crowded with the person you were, the person you are, and the person you're trying not to be. The production resists the temptation to inflate. It keeps the kit clean, the synths conversational, the top line just crooked enough to feel human. Zhang's vocal brings the architecture. Precise rhythm, syllables that sit exactly where the snare expects them, a dancer's respect for time. Liu brings the narrative. He rounds the notes at the edges, lifts a line by a breath rather than a beat, and lets the grain in his voice do some of the song's storytelling for him. The effect is not a blend so much as a braid. Two textures creating a pattern stronger than either alone. The hot search economy and the ritual of announcement. Fans didn't just hear, they participated. On both sides of the duet, phones became light sticks and megaphones at once. The pair's social posts, scheduled to land at almost the same minute, felt like a wry nod to the ritual of modern fandom. The synchronized beat drop of content, the choreography of anticipation. The internet, which seldom lets itself be surprised, let itself be surprised for once. When the collaboration officially went live the next day, the comments crystallized a consensus. Looping, wrote one fan. Finally a collab that doesn't sound like a meeting, wrote another. A veteran critic called it a small miracle of contrast. Zhang's futurism giving the song flight, Liu's smoke giving it gravity. It's not the sort of praise you can buy. It's the kind you earn by doing less and doing it exactly right. What it took backstage. Controlled chaos, disciplined joy. Backstage, the mood was a paradox. Nervous serenity. Micro-decisions accumulated like dominoes. Which side takes the pickup into the second pre-chorus? Who counts the bridge after the crowd roar inevitably drags the tempo by a hair? What happens if a network buffer sneezes? The teams built escape hatches, a local click track that could take over seamlessly, pre-programmed lighting states that would make a graceful visual out of an audio hiccup. A visual count-in gesture both singers could see on their downstage monitors. And then they did what great performers always do, they played. You could hear it in the middle 8, where Zhang leaned into a new harmony and Liu answered by lifting a tail note like a question. You could see it in the camera cuts, two smiles forming in different postal codes but clearly the same joke. The planning made room for grace. The grace made the planning invisible. Why this matters for Mandopop right now. The Chinese pop industry sits at a juncture where scale and soul often wrestle. Tours get bigger. Screens get taller. Budgets balloon. Yet the songs that last usually enter through small doors. A humming fragment, a face seen sideways on the subway, a name mentioned by accident. This duet reconciled the two, stadium-size intimacy, and that's why it stuck. It also hinted at a future where technical ambition becomes emotional access. The cross-city trick wasn't a gimmick. It was a doorway. Imagine the permutations now that the blueprint exists. Duet bridges spanning Beijing and Chengdu. A surprise harmony from Taipei. A chorus that peals simultaneously from 7 provinces during festival season. The future of live music isn't just bigger. It's closer, rearranging distance into texture. The myth of effortless chemistry. There's a persistent myth that chemistry in music is effortless, that the right two artists simply collide and the universe does the rest. Nights like this expose the half-truth. Yes, the spark was accidental and unpolished, abstract and rash, to borrow Liu's self-aware phrasing. But it took knowledge to protect that spark from the wind, the producer's instinct to carve space for another voice, the singer's humility to let a different color lead, the engineer's stubbornness to tame milliseconds that refuse to be tamed. Effortless chemistry is often just well-hidden effort. Rituals without cynicism. Fans joke that choosing the same night to perform, and posting teasers within a heartbeat of each other, was musicians' romance. The phrase is telling. In an age wary of marketing, audiences are quick to sniff out contrivance. What they responded to here wasn't the ritual itself, coordinated posts, synchronized encores. It was the sense that the ritual served the song, not the other way around. The spectacle didn't smother the melody. It set it free. The moment that stayed. Every show has a snapshot that lingers long after the confetti is swept. For many, it was the line where the lyric slips from I to we. As if the grammar itself is healing.提到了你. Zhang's head turned slightly, listening as if the second voice were a memory coming true. Liu held the vowel a fraction of a beat, as though making room for a thought to arrive. The arenas yelled not because the note was high or the light was bright, but because they recognized something true. That sometimes the distance you feel is shorter than the distance you fear. What comes next and why it will matter. Artists are superstitious about promising the future out loud. The best promise is a next song. But the implications are already humming. For artists, a proof of concept that spontaneity can survive scale. For production teams, A template for cross-city synchronization that prizes feeling over flaunting. For fans, a new kind of presence, where being in one arena does not mean missing the other. For the industry, a nudge toward collaborations born of curiosity, not calculus. It's tempting to frame the whole event as exceptional, a lightning strike that cannot be bottled. Perhaps. But there's another story available, that this was not an endpoint but a starting pistol, a reminder that the tools exist to stage encounters as surprising as the parking lot hello that started it all. Coda. The quiet after the storm. After the adrenaline wears off, after the last rideshare tail light disappears from the plaza, there's a private aftermath to performance. Tea cooling on a dressing room table, a pair of in-ears coiled like sleeping snakes, a phone face down and buzzing like a small animal. In that quiet, two musicians probably did what musicians always do after a good risk. They laughed, they replayed the moment where it nearly went sideways, they texted the team a thank you longer than the credits. And then, because this is how you stay good, they went back to work.